welcome.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you here finally.
Thank you for having me. Yeah,
But
this has been a long time.
It's been a work in progress.
Yeah.
Every week I'm like, shit, let's get this guy on. I end up doing something and then working 2 jobs, then 1 job, not 2 jobs at 1 job. But introduce yourself.
Bryson Allen. I've known Mike for
a minute.
Quite a while, yeah. Went to school with my brother, so that's how we know each other.
Yeah.
And I like your podcast. I like podcasts in general. I listen to a lot of podcasts.
Yeah, gas me up.
But I like your podcast.
Appreciate it.
I watched a few episodes with Liv, and you guys do some funny stuff. So
yeah, she was like, "Hey, he wants to come on." I'm like, "You know what? Fuck it.
Yeah.
I'll talk to anyone."
Exactly.
But how's the pandemic treated you?
Man, this sucks.
What, any hot takes on the pandemic itself?
Like, I'm kind of under the, like, in the camp where it's like, we're done. This is over. We're done with it.
You got your vax, or?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I do. I had to for my work, so.
Makes sense. Well, that's the question. Would you have taken it if you didn't have to for work?
Probably not.
Interesting.
I mean, if it was solely up to me, I don't think so, because I'm kind of under the impression that it's like, I'm young, I'm healthy, I don't have any other, like, I don't have anything going on, I'm relatively healthy, so I understand. I understand, but like, I don't really care. Like, I'm not like one of those people that's like, I took it, like, I don't care.
It's an iffy situation, right? Because you have people that are like, you have to take the vaccine, do it, blah, blah, blah. But then you have people that are like, okay, here's how effective the vaccine is. Here's how many people survive. Like, I know some people who have lost family members, but then you take into account those people already had compromised immune systems, right?
Whatever happened to, like, people just, like, saying, like,
germs are good for you?
Well, that. But, like, whatever happened to, like, the personal responsibility of it, like, stay in shape? Like, imagine at the start of the pandemic, instead of saying lock yourself in your house, they said go to the gym. I think we'd be in a lot better place right now.
I mean, it's interesting because I've seen stuff that I'm like, this kind of feels like propaganda from the Canadian government.
Kinda.
Well, if you go on Snapchat, there's a million ads every time you go through a story, right?
Dude, you ever watch TV?
I don't
I
stay on Netflix for a reason.
Yeah.
You gotta stay away from those ads.
Yeah, I gotta stay away from the brainwashing.
But that's the problem. We can turn that into the other question I had for you that was like, hey, how has living in a shitty little town affected your experience and the outlook on the world? But like, I feel like being on your phone too, surrounded by people in a small town, you get in that bubble of we all have the same opinion basically.
I mean, I read a lot, I listen to a lot of podcasts, okay. I watch a lot of stuff, so no, I don't really share opinions with like the status quo, I would say.
Do you think it's more, like, for me personally, like, I know my ideology has changed because I didn't want to have the same ideas as the people around me. Like, I was interested in seeing outside of that, right?
So are we talking like politics, for example?
Like, it's all facets, but like, let's just say politics alone.
I got into, like, I'm huge into politics. Like, we've talked about that. I got into politics I just graduated high school. So I got into politics probably the start of grade 11. So it's been like almost 2 years.
You say class? Like, I know I took Mr. Smith's politics class.
Yeah, I did too, but that's not how I got into it. I think I got into it I got into it. I loved history, like a grade 10 history. Like, that was I've always liked history.
History's great.
And I think they kind of go hand in hand. But I started really getting into politics with like the far left social democrat kind of types. Like, I was really interested in, like, I would watch debates with like Bernie Sanders or like.
It's a good time.
Even like in Canada, like the NDPs, like I liked their marketing style, and like I got into them. I started to like follow them a little bit, and then as time kind of went on, the more I kind of like got into it, I started to kind of expand my horizon of who I was listening to, what I was reading.
Start to lean.
Yeah, so like I was like hardcore. Like, man, you could have called me a commie for like a good while, but then it's like I think quarantine really started it for me, where I like actually had time now, like I wasn't in school, and like I would watch like 5 hours of videos a night on YouTube of this stuff, and then it just totally like switched for me.
Where do you think you are right now on the political spectrum?
Oh, I'm a libertarian.
Okay, perfect.
For sure. Yeah, like if there was a button in front of me right now that could end the government, I would press it. Like,
and what's your ideal government setup? We'll say, since you're into politics, I feel like you have a
no government.
No government.
No
anarchy.
Government. Anarchy.
Self-governing.
Yes.
Individual
rights.
It's iffy because it turns into the idea of how we've originated as the strong survive, right? Which is easy to say when you are the strong, right?
But like, I'm like a twig. I'm like 150 pounds.
Yeah, but you're
soaking wet. But why hasn't the U.S. taken over Canada yet? They're stronger than us. They can take us out in a minute.
I don't think they could.
You don't think so?
Yeah, maybe
it's the strongest military that the world's ever seen.
But the problem is, like, it would be annexation of Canada, right? That's how it would go down, most likely.
But my point is, it's like, people don't want to mess with other people.
I see what you're saying.
For the most part. The vast majority of people
that are the outliers in society already.
And that's the question when it comes to anarchy. It's like, how do we deal with those people? And I think the first step in having that conversation is you have to understand that like murderers are like the tiniest percent of our population, and then you go from there.
Bring down the sickle on the murderers.
Well, so like obviously there's like different types of anarchy. So like there's like anarchical communism, which would be like the Antifa groups, like that kind of stuff. So like not for that.
Not that. We're not that vibe.
No. Okay. Capitalism, I'm a big fan.
When you start making money, you stray further from the commies.
Oh. You actually get a job.
Yeah, I've had Talon on the podcast, and I know that guy used to be super libertarian, super heavy communist, and then he got a job, and then started investing money, and he's like, holy shit.
Dude, the market's great. The market could be a lot better, though, without government.
I mean,
imagine you didn't have to pay taxes.
Are you in favor of the privatized system?
What do you mean?
Well, if we compare both models, Canada very universal, and we give you whatever you need. Our tax system funds the people, right? Yeah. But in the States, we're still taking it.
But we're funding it to bomb the Middle East.
Pretty much. We're taking your taxes. We're going to fund things that don't directly affect you, and then make you pay out of pocket for anything else.
Yeah, no. I mean, I hate both systems, but if you're gonna take my tax money, you might as well. See, I don't know though, because like universal healthcare is it's horrible.
It's horrible, but it's working, right?
So?
It's working in the sense that if I break my arm, yeah, I might have to wait, but at the end of the day, I'm not gonna have to worry afterwards about, oh my God, am I going to be able to pay this? I have an injury that I wouldn't be able to work. I can't pay it. I understand, like, in the States, you pay health insurance, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But that's the problem, too. Everything gets jacked up
because of the government,
yeah.
Though. In a real privatized system, it wouldn't get jacked up. The government wouldn't.
It's too much regulation, right?
Exactly.
Especially with insurance providers.
Exactly.
Like, I saw it the other day, a lady said she went to get a COVID test in the States and paid out of pocket was like $120. But when she billed it through her insurance, they charged it for $800.
Yeah, so and it's because they can do that because there's so much regulation on it that there's no market for the insurers, and there's only the big. It's monopolized pretty much, right?
Okay.
That's why regulation's so bad for the market, because so for example, what example would I want to use? Maybe like a small business, and you're a small business, say you're a flower shop. I read a story about like some flower shop in like New Hampshire or something.
Sure.
And just like a small family business, and a kid down the street was like 10, 12 years old, something like that, a young kid, and walked into the flower shop and said, I want a job for the summer. Like, you don't have to like pay me minimum wage, just pay me what you can pay me. You're a small business. But legally, because of regulations and child labor laws, they can't hire that child.
See, I know about child labor laws and stuff like that, but I'm still baffled that at 14, I was working in a plastic factory. So I don't know where these child labor laws people are, but they're showing up for shit like, oh, you can't be a fry cook at McDonald's, right? And I understand what you're saying about small business, that the regulation forces minimum wage, so then you get fucked over because you can't afford that, right?
Yeah, exactly. And if there wasn't that regulation, that would make both sides would benefit. The flower shop would be able to hire the kid, and they wouldn't have to pay them crazy amounts of money, and the kid is making more money and actually has stuff to do for the summer instead of going out and smoking pot with his friends.
I mean, why not have the best of both worlds,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
But I think at the end of the day, regulation's still super important, because I 100% agree with you that small business is getting brutally ruined by the fact they have to pay minimum wage.
For sure, and it just keeps going up because the government prints so much money, right?
Fuck it, we're gonna get wrecked by the inflation on the way.
Disgusting.
I mean, I got that question lined up here for you because I know we're a few years apart, so I can ask you about your generation. Because I was born in 2000. I like to include myself in the 90s.
You're even a year older than Darcy.
Yeah, I'm older than everybody.
Oh, and back, just whoever's gonna watch this, smoke pot's not bad. Smoke all the pot you want.
Thank you.
That's another
At
thing
least
I'm
you're not
for.
a Ben Shapiro.
Oh my god, man! I'll give Ben Shapiro credit. That guy got me away from being like a total leftist. But now that I'm like a libertarian, it's like, man, that guy needs to shut up.
Yeah.
I agree with him on like economics. I think he knows a lot about economics.
Well,
like,
yeah, he's a well-read person, talks really fast, but his viewpoint's very skewed.
Yeah. When he's like, what does he like talk about? Like drugs was one where it's just like, shut up, just shut up.
I heard him talk about like
even gay marriage. It's like, dude, he's like,
he goes off about it. He's like, I don't believe in it, but you can do it. But the government shouldn't be allowed to tell you.
Which that's kind of like I agree with that. It's like, I mean, it's not that I don't agree with it. I don't care.
Sure.
I really don't care what you do.
You
like, exactly.
Sleep with who you want to sleep with.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But do whatever like the government should have. That's like kind of like my view on like abortion too. It's like personally, it's like, do I agree with that? I don't know. It's like the most nuanced thing you can talk about.
Sure. A million different viewpoints.
But do I think the government stopping it would make the situation better? No. Because it's not going to happen.
See, the government should regulate it, but just let it happen. We should provide safe abortions. So like the problem is,
but you don't need the government for that. Is what I'm saying.
If you have a privatized system, though, then you have to pay out of pocket for that, which would force people into the more dangerous avenues to pay less, right?
I mean, if you create a good market for it, though, it'll be so cheap.
The abortion market's booming.
Dude, these days.
Hey, overpopulation's a problem, people. One per person and we're set.
And that's one topic where it's just like, I don't even want to talk about with people, where it's like, you never know what you're going to say, right? I feel like I have a pretty well-rounded, well-read opinion on it. It's like, I don't know.
I mean...
So, it's like, I don't know, so I'm not going to try to change it for you, you know? Like,
right.
I think everyone knows their own situation best, so just let them have it and let them have their opinion, let them do what they got to do.
I agree with that, but at the end of the day, I think we got to stop letting old dudes decide what women are doing with their bodies.
100%.
Just let the women be happy, let them live their life.
100%.
I'm glad you don't have
I think we just got to stop old dudes in general.
Oh, fuck. Boomer removers. Send them out.
Boomer cons?
They're too much. Imagine
Isn't it funny, though? Isn't it funny to just watch, like,
them
Joe
go
Biden speak? Even
I like
Trump.
I like the AMSR videos where he, like, whispers into the microphone. He's too good. But, like,
oh my God.
I don't know. The U.S. political system's a joke because you're forcing everybody to say, oh, you have to be red or blue, and you have to support this candidate. That's the problem with a two-party system.
No, bro. The Libertarian Party's on its way up.
It's not going to happen for a while. There's too much... People want to be divided. That's the problem. It's easier to say, I want to be blue, I want to be red, and I hate you for your ideology.
But, so the Libertarian Party is actually, it's split into 3 caucuses.
Okay.
So there's the Pragmatist Caucus, the Radical Caucus, and the Mises Caucus.
Okay.
So there was just a big thing where, so the Mises Caucus kind of, it's the newest one. It came out of, like, do you know Ron Paul?
No.
So
I know RuPaul.
Do you know Rand Paul?
No.
So Rand Paul's a senator from Kentucky right now.
Okay.
He's a libertarian, but he's a Republican.
Sure.
So his dad was Ron Paul, and they're both doctors, but he was a congressman in Texas starting in like '93 maybe.
Okay.
Retired in like 2012. He ran for president as the Libertarian Party in like the '90s, I think, late '90s maybe.
Okay.
Like maybe when Clinton was president. And then he ran as a Republican in 2008 and 2012. And he made it to like the final four. But he kind of like started this like revolution where it's like, he was like this old OBGYN. Like he was just some weird, but he knew this guy. He was like the only Republican to be against like the Iraq War and the Patriot Act and like all these terrible things.
Right? Like,
but he knew more about economics than like anyone. Like it was amazing. And that's kind of where I like started my libertarian viewpoints.
Okay.
But anyway, so he runs for president in 2008, 2012, and there's just like this revolution of young people just following him, and the Libertarian Party grows a lot because of him. And his ideology stems from someone named Ludwig von Mises. That's where the Mises Caucus comes from, and he's like this like philosopher, economist, like all this kind of stuff. So the Libertarian Party, after he retires in 2013, there's like this new wave of young people going into the Libertarian Party, and they start the Mises Caucus. And now there's someone named Dave Smith. He's a comedian and he's a libertarian, and he's like the head of like he doesn't like run the Mises Caucus, but like he's the main messenger, I would say. He's the face of it, of the movement. He's like on Joe Rogan all the time and like all these big podcasts and stuff.
I've seen him.
Yeah, amazing. I listen to his podcast.
Okay.
That's how that's where I learn all my stuff.
Educated.
Yeah.
I love to see it.
So he's talking about running for president as a libertarian candidate. But the Mises Caucus is just taking over the Libertarian Party right now, and it's really good.
So do you think it's more going to be an absorption of... So if you have the three caucuses and then one dominates, right?
Yeah.
Do you think there's going to be an absorption into the left or the right, and then they'll take over that way? Or do you think they'll rise out as like the third option?
To start, I think if they can get big enough where they can change the conversation.
Yeah.
So maybe they talk about ending the war in Afghanistan.
Sure.
Because libertarians are extremely anti-war.
Yeah.
So, or maybe ending the drone strikes in Yemen or whatever countries we're talking about.
Bombing these people. You
Just
can't
let
even
them
hit them.
live.
They're hiding in caves. Like, it's not working.
Let them live, man. Maybe they can talk. Maybe they can get 10% of the vote.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Like they
It's a
maybe
huge
get
deal,
3,
yeah.
but like if they can have 10% of the people following them, maybe the Republicans can start saying, "Okay, we're anti-war."
Yeah.
So maybe they can, you know what I mean? They can shift the conversation.
It's never going to happen with the Republicans, most likely, because like the amount of Republicans backed by defense contractors is
It's insane.
unbelievable.
Yeah. But
So much
Democrats
money.
too. Like Obama.
Everybody takes
Obama
money.
started 8 new wars when he was president.
The problem is, as soon as you get into a position of power, everybody wants to pull the levers, right? Everybody from the outside is like, hey, here's $1 million for your campaign.
Oh yeah.
Just give us a little kickback at the end of the year.
And like, how can one person run a country of 330 million? It's insane. So these people probably, my guess is like, they get the first day they're president, they like get like a list on their desk. It's like, here's what you actually have control of. We'll handle the rest.
Well, it's the idea
So it's like
of
the
shadow
CIA,
government, right?
and it's like the deep state, right? Like the deep state's real.
It's not debatable. They're selling kids to make that money. We know they're up to stuff. Don't set me off on this conspiracy.
But no, like the deep state is a real thing, and it's like that's one good thing about Trump. Say whatever you want about him.
Drain the swamp.
Drain the swamp. He didn't drain the swamp.
Yeah.
He's a coward. I hate him. But at least he started the conversation. But then that's when you got like QAnon, those morons.
It's the problem of, it's not how many people are listening, it's who is listening. And as soon as someone listens and misinterprets, and if they can get enough people to listen to them, you're fucked. That's how you get riots at the Capitol. That's the problem with
Can we
all
talk
that
about
shit.
that though?
Go off.
Is that really a riot? There's like a dude in like a horned helmet taking selfies in
It's a big deal.
Like, who cares?
When you're just letting a bunch of white old dudes with guns into your nation's capital, and they're running amok, destroying the place.
As a libertarian,
that's the problem.
As a libertarian, there's like kind of some weird satisfaction I have with like the people overthrowing their government.
It's the wrong people, and they're not overthrowing. Yeah, I don't want the
QAnon idiots doing that. That's true. But like, what would you rather have? Would you rather have people going into the Capitol because they think they're the person? Like 72 million people voted for Donald Trump. And now they're being told, like, they truly believe he won that election. Yeah. And they're being told that he didn't. So it's like...
That's where the division comes in the United States, with such a mass population.
So my question is, what would you rather have? Would you rather have that? Or would you rather have, like, say what you want about the Black Lives Matter stuff? Like, I'm totally for ending police brutality.
Racism.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I'm for ending the police in general. I'm for private security.
Hey, go on.
But
I think that's the problem with.
But my question is, what would you rather have? People burning down someone's business, or people going to the Capitol?
Right. So it's the micro and the macro of who you're affecting. When we saw the Black Lives Matter protest blow up after the death of George Floyd, right?
Yeah. Oh, that was
the problem.
Terrible.
Is you had people that are in the group saying, like, let's march, this is what it's for, but then you have the outliers join, and then the mob mentality forms. As soon as someone throws something, everybody's throwing something.
No, yeah,
and you're damaging business.
Like I said, I'm totally for like insurrection. Like, I think insurrection's not a bad thing.
Okay, you didn't hear it here, people.
In the right,
led.
Yeah, and like, man. Like the U.S. Revolution, like they became a country because of an insurrection. Like Thomas Jefferson was an insurrectionist.
I mean, that country's founded on the idea of wanting independence, right? And so I think that's an even bigger problem when you get into states' rights, of how every state still wants to be independent. That's a major problem in the United States.
Well, that's what the Constitution says. But we can get into that, man.
Oh, hey,
I love U.S. history,
everything.
But back to what we were talking about with the protests. It's like, what if they said, like, what if they actually just like had policy and had things that they really wanted to change and worked for that? Maybe those riots, maybe if they were rioting about like how they can end these systemic issues and like this police brutality against Black people, whoever.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to see anyone die by the hands of the police. Like that George Floyd video, man.
It's fucked up.
That I don't even want, like, it's insane. And we need some sort of accountability for the police, because that's another problem with the police, is they're a government monopoly and there's no one that can hold them accountable.
Well, the fucked up thing that you realize with policing is that police have unions. And the whole problem with police unions is that you have taxpayers funding the police, and there's a union in place trying to get more money, or systematically setting up other places not to get things. Like in Missouri, they did this thing where they took 10% of the police budget and said, we'll have non-violent officers, like no weapons.
Which I feel like is a good thing.
Right? But then when that happened, police unions set it up so that the senator or congressman, whatever, that helped pass that bill, his area of the city would not receive policing. They just don't show up to calls now.
Man, what if we, like the U.S. like Second Amendment? I don't know what your opinion on guns is.
Okay, I'm all over the place. My personal belief is I think guns are a beautiful thing. I think it's a very interesting piece of craftsmanship, and I like it from that standpoint. I don't think there's a need for all of these rednecks in the United States and other individuals to own mass amounts of firearms. You're going to do anything.
I would agree.
Only thing you're going to do is kill police officers before the military shows up. And if the United States wanted to go to war with its people, they would just carpet bomb you. It's not a debate. You're not going to win. I don't understand. Like, the problem is, like, Second Amendment, protect yourself from tyranny, right? You don't want the government to encroach on you.
There's no other amendment.
But now we're at a point where it doesn't matter. You're not going to do shit if the government encroaches on you. You're going to shoot off a couple guns and then they're going to...
I think it's very hard to control a population that's armed. If you look back on history, any tyrannical government, the first thing that they do is take away the guns.
Yeah.
So Mao took away the guns.
Yeah.
Stalin took away the guns.
Now
Hitler took away the guns.
Yeah.
Fidel Castro took away the guns. That's the first thing that any...
De-arm the population is
because
how you
then,
win, right?
What are they going to do?
Right.
Complain about it? That's why I'm pro-gun in that sense. But then I also understand that there's issues. But there's no, like, do I want to see school shootings? No. Like,
No.
That breaks my heart to see those things. But at the same time, it's like, maybe instead of blaming the guns, we need to talk about mental health. And we need to talk about personal responsibility. And we need to talk about those kind of things. Whereas maybe it's not the gun. Like, you could kill someone with your bare hand. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, if you want to kill someone, you'll kill someone. And the other thing with the guns is, who are we to, like, it's like drugs. We should legalize drugs because right now there's a black market for it, and black markets breed crime.
Right.
So if guns are illegal, who's going to be getting arrested for it? The rich white guy or the guy in the inner city?
Right.
Same with drugs. The war on drugs is just a way to
crack down on
the black population,
minority communities.
yeah, whoever it is, the poor.
It's why it was set up.
The more
We
poor
literally
people in the inner cities
have calls from Nixon and Reagan's administration of people saying, "Yeah, that's why we're doing it." Like,
and Clinton too. Clinton was the worst, probably.
they're
on crime.
all garbage. That's the problem. You have people put in office by people who are garbage. Like, when you realize that the United States isn't a democracy and more of an oligarchy. And when
that's what government is, though. Like, our government's the same way.
Well, we've never made the switch, right? We've always had a system where there's one head, and then they start putting their family in positions of power, and that's what controls everything. And even when a new family comes in, everybody's still buddy-buddy behind the scenes. Like,
well, that's why everyone hates Trump, right? He took out the two biggest families in American politics.
Yeah.
In the primaries, he took out Jeb Bush in the Republican primaries.
The Bushes have been running shit for too long.
Oh, dude, I was listening to a podcast today, and say what you want about Alex Jones, but, like, that guy...
I have a lot to say about Alex
Jones. 100%,
Yeah.
Everyone does, but, like, you gotta take the good with the bad, right?
Well, the problem is Alex Jones started out as a legitimate news reporter, and that's how he got into... It's easier to keep a following when you start out legitimate and slowly veer off the cliff, right?
I don't think that it's that he's illegitimate now. It's just he's had some really bad mistakes, like the Sandy Hook stuff. But he turned, like, he went away from that. I think PB just has this reputation, but he's extremely well read and he knows his stuff. So I was listening to a thing with him today. George H.W. Bush, so George W. Bush's dad, who was president before Clinton for one term, he was the head of the CIA at age 37.
That's when it was still, was it OSC or whatever, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
Because he was head of CIA. Like, his family has been intertwined with the CIA for years.
Oh, and that's where they have all the dirty money, right?
Well, it's fucking scary when you realize all these heads of state all over the world start meeting up at fucking Bohemian Grove to burn an owl statue.
Yeah,
this
bro.
is where people
Walter
get
Cronkite.
concerned. Like, when the average citizen's like, oh, hey, I want to believe in my government. All these people in cloaks are burning an owl statue, and they're your government leaders. Something's up,
Yeah.
right?
But, I mean, if you really think of, like, any cultural problem today, it probably is the Bush's fault. Like, George W. Bush, the last time, like, the right-wing conservative religious kind of culture was the dominant culture would have been right after 9/11.
Yeah.
So everyone
Because it was a war on religion, if you can say.
Well, that's part of it too.
Extremists
But,
did this.
I
you
mean,
have a supervillain, right?
I wasn't even born when 9/11 happened.
Right.
You were
I was
a
1.
year old.
Yeah.
But from, like, what I've read and what I've kind of put together from it, it's like after 9/11, everyone had an American flag. Everyone was so together to fight this enemy, which we can talk about why 9/11 happened. I don't know your opinion.
There's a lot of opinions.
Like, are you okay? Are you a truther? Like, what do you think?
I believe that several members of Al Qaeda hijacked planes and flew them into the towers. Now, did the U.S. have ample notice that this was going to happen? Do we know that the Saudis were involved?
No,
Yes.
the Saudis were involved. It was the Saudis.
It's suspicious when you have, I forget his name, it's one of the congressmen, when they released the 9/11 report, they redacted like 30 pages. And every time foreign relations with the Saudis get out of hand, they always threaten to pull out these 30 pages because it directly implicates head officials, even the crown prince, in being involved.
Yeah, wasn't like the Saudi king or prince or whatever at the White House like 8 days after 9/11?
They knew them. Like, they knew the hijackers. They funded everything.
The Saudis did. Yeah. And like, I think like all but 3 of the hijackers were Saudis.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm kind of in the camp that believes that it happened because of like, and Bin Laden even stated in his letter to, I forget the name of it, his kind of reasoning before he died was the U.S. treatment of the Middle East.
Yeah, his foreign policy is what they said.
Their bombing of Pakistan and the sanctions against Iran that caused the death of, what they say, 500,000 children starved to death because of the sanctions against Iran.
Yeah.
Like, of course, imagine someone did that to our country, what would happen?
People would lose their minds. It's the idea that you can't properly view a situation from the outside. Like, now it's, if we want to talk about Israel-Palestine, for example,
Bro.
It's become such a shit show of people turn it into, oh, it's still a religious war, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, it's not. The state of Israel has been around for this long now.
Yeah.
We had a country in which everybody was living in unison to an extent, right? But now we have a new nation systematically committing genocide against another one, right?
Yeah, the Israel-Palestine, I want to get back to my original point first, and then we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
So my point about the Bushes ruining the culture. So 9/11 happens, they wage a war in Iraq and a war in Afghanistan. Why? What, Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction? That was a big fat lie.
We gave them the weapons of mass destruction.
It was such a lie.
We trained Al Qaeda. Like, it's not.
And we're still doing that in Syria, or well, we're not. We're in Canada.
We're
but
creating
America
the
is.
enemy. That's how it's always been. There's a
Yeah.
new, I forget his name. There's a news cycle of every 20 years they make a new villain.
Yeah.
For the public
Well, that's
to go
actually
after.
Dave Smith. We're talking about Dave Smith.
Yeah.
His podcast, Part of the Problem, the intro is like, it says stuff about the war on drugs, and it's like we spy on our own people. Our prisons are flooded with nonviolent drug offenders.
Yeah.
And if you want to know who our next enemy is, look who we're funding right now. So that's exactly it, right?
Right.
So they wage these 2 wars for whatever reason, weapons of mass destruction, garbage. And what do they got to do to fund those wars? They got to lower interest rates. So now people who maybe wouldn't buy a house.
Are you getting into the 2008 collapse? Oh, okay.
I'm getting there.
All
So
right.
maybe people who wouldn't have bought a house can now buy a house because interest rates, their money it's gonna be worth less. That's what interest rates are. It's what money's gonna be worth in the future. So now their money's gonna, like, they can afford that because they're not gonna have to pay so much interest.
Yeah.
So now they're buying houses on credit that they cannot afford. And that leads you to 2008.
It's a problem with spending money you don't have.
That's the problem with credit, yeah.
Well, that's why we had the 1928 or 9 collapse.
29, yeah.
29, because everybody's buying stocks on credit.
Yeah.
Like, that's the problem. And then when you say, hey, I want to cash out because the market's crashing, you
Well,
can't.
we got no money to give you.
Right.
The banks had no money to give anyone when they were pulling out their savings and all that, right?
I guess we can divert that back to regulation, right?
Well, 100%.
And I think that was a major problem.
The Federal Reserve, right?
Well, they bailed out, but they knew what was going on. Everybody knew this collapse was coming. When you see people on Wall Street, major hedge funds investing in shorting the market, you know it's going to happen. My boy Michael Burry warning us about another financial collapse. It's coming. It's not.
Yeah, look at the housing market.
It's out of control. It needs to be leveled again. It's not.
We gotta let it fail. But it all comes back to the Federal Reserve and the government printing money to fund wars or fund whatever stupid. Like think about
it makes money.
Well, and think
Billions.
about where we're going right now. The boomers. Think about the boomers. Think about our population pyramid.
Yeah.
We did this in grade 9 geography. It's an upside down triangle now, right?
Yeah.
All our whole population's all older people. No one's having kids these days because no one can get a job.
Yeah.
Everyone's flooded in student debt. So it's so unsustainable. But think about the entitlements that we're paying out and we're not getting the taxes. So we're paying out entitlements to the older people when they retire. Well, I forget the age, and I think the age is like 60 or
65,
so low.
Something like that. Yeah,
it's way too low. Life expectancy is way too we're at what 82 years is the Canadian.
It's a bit higher now.
Yeah,
but still, it's
insane. So we're paying out entitlements for every person for over 20 years of their life.
Yeah,
it's like a quarter of their life. It's insane. So we don't have the money to do it, and so that's going to lead us to printing money and an economic collapse. And then I wouldn't be surprised if in the next 2-3 years we have another 2008.
Yeah, it's on the way.
Probably worse.
Save
and the COVID
relief is killing us. Like it's.
But save your money. It's like you want to save your money, but at the same time, it's like if I got $8,000 in the bank right now, but in two years the inflation's so bad that $8,000 is now worth $4,000. I don't know what the numbers are going to be, but that's just an example, right? So do you want to save your money or do you want to buy assets that are going to keep their value?
You just invest.
Bitcoin?
That money in the market.
Are you a Bitcoin fan?
I was in crypto until Binance got shafted by the Ontario government, and they said you can't operate in Ontario unless you regulate under our regulations. They said, go fuck yourself.
Government, bro.
100% understand that. I wouldn't deal with that shit.
What, crypto?
The whole point is having a decentralized currency, and now you're trying to regulate it. It was like years ago when they said, oh, we want to tax you on how much crypto you have, but that's not fair. I don't want to be taxed when I'm at 100 grand and then drop to 20, right? But I'm still paying that.
Well, you're making a good point about taxes in general. Though.
Yeah.
Because think about it. The people on the left would say we got to raise taxes because
we got to tax the rich.
They don't pay their fair share, even though they pay by far.
I mean, not Jeff Bezos. Man hasn't paid federal income tax in years. Amazon hasn't paid federal income tax. It's super fucking smart how they do it.
Oh yeah, and I don't blame them for doing it.
Right.
But here's the thing: when you raise taxes, so say there's 8 companies: Google, Facebook, Amazon, Coca-Cola, whatever. Those huge companies that are bigger than life.
Yeah.
You raise taxes on them. That makes it so the tier underneath them can't make it to that tier because they won't be able to sustain those taxes. So all you're doing is helping Amazon by saying, that other company that's like they're what do you call it, in competition with.
Okay.
They can't sustain those taxes, so they'll never be able to get to Amazon's.
I mean, well, that's the whole reason our tax system cuts off at certain points, right? If you're in the $100,000 tax bracket, people don't understand. You're not getting taxed 60% on your entire income. It's 60% every 100,000, right? I don't like it. I don't like getting taxed. It's a pain in the ass.
If they were actually doing good things with my taxes, I wouldn't be mad.
If we all got to choose where our tax money went,
where would your tax money go?
Public education.
No.
I have to.
You're a public education fan?
I think if I could control it with my tax dollars, we'd actually have a strong education system where we could teach kids things instead of just babysitting them for 8 hours
turning
a day.
them into slaves.
Well, it's the whole idea of when you go to school, you're conditioned. You listen, a bell rings, you leave, you walk in line.
You have to ask to go to the bathroom.
Right? And they're conditioning you for what?
It's borderline child abuse.
I mean, I wouldn't take it that far.
I would.
Not anymore, right?
It's getting worse.
How so? But we're giving everybody a gold star now. I don't think it's
getting
worse.
That's how it's getting worse.
Do you think it's child abuse in the sense we're not preparing children?
Yes.
Especially right now, like I brought this question because I want to ask you. Your generation, mine, up to millennials, we're shit show. It's a shit show right now. We
Yes.
have to fix everything in these next couple years, right? So how do you think that you weren't prepared? Do you think it's fucked up how I get out of high school, I had to ask to go to the washroom, but next year I have to pay taxes, move out, go to school, do all these major life decisions, right?
Well, I would say that you're not taught about taxes for a reason in school. Why would the government, who runs our schooling, teach you about them stealing your money, and if you don't pay that money, you go and live in a cage for the rest of your life?
Well, yeah, it's fucked up. We have a system, especially in the States, where somebody can go to jail for a longer time for tax evasion than committing assault against another person. Like,
Well, you can go to jail for in Canada.
it's not. Well, Canada, you're more likely to be like, hey, pay us back. We'll set up a payment plan for you.
Well,
State
you still have
IRS
to.
will fucking. lock
But you
up for
still
20
have to
years.
pay them.
Yeah,
Anyone but the government. Say I was.
you fuck over anyone. It doesn't matter. The
It-
government.
Say I came up to you and I said, Mike, give me 20% of your income, and you
Right.
said, no.
How
That's
much am I
theft.
getting back? That's
You
what I
said
would want to know.
you'd say no, that's theft.
Yeah.
And then I would say, if you don't give me 20% of your income, I'm gonna throw you in this 6x4 foot cage, give you one meal a day, and treat you like an animal for the rest of your life. You're gonna give me that money.
While I take other people's to pay for putting you in that cage, which I'm gonna pay more than you'll make in your entire life probably per year. It's just to keep you there. It makes no sense.
Exactly.
It's like
all bizarre.
I think Canada we've reached like 130 grand per prisoner. Like it's. I don't want to get into that. I don't want to go off about the prison system.
Dude. But that's what's funding this stuff. It all starts with the education system. It's propaganda.
Well, it needs to be wiped. Like we need to start over. Like
Yeah.
it's.
So there's this thing going on in the States right now that I find really interesting, and it's this like movement towards funding students and not systems.
Okay.
And a lot of like state legislators are starting to get on board with it, and like some states are actually really. I think West Virginia was the first one to fully do it.
Okay.
So instead of your tax dollars going to the school
Yeah.
or the whatever the school system, it goes to each student gets the percentage. So like say you'll get $20,000 this year to choose where you can spend it on education however you want. So
Okay.
if you're a parent and your kid, you have two kids, and instead of sending them to a public school, you can maybe send them to a private school with that 20,000, or a boarding school, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Homeschool them with, you can use that money to homeschool them. And that's how, I think that's the way to get out of this. I think
we need an overhaul, right? Because like, I still believe that the public education system can do good. I want to believe
you want to believe it.
I think right now it's in a very bad state. I think we're in a bad state when we pass everybody through, when we say, here's your gold star. The reason I hustled as hard as I did to get out of elementary school was in fear of failing, because teachers said they would fail me, which they couldn't do, but I didn't know that at the time. It's that motivation of being behind, right? And we don't have that anymore.
Well, that's part of it too, but now it's going to get worse. I don't know, like, what are your thoughts on like this, like the new wave of education? So like critical theory and
Critical race theory?
critical race. Yeah, but so critical race theory comes from a broader sense of critical theory, which is critical race theory, queer theory. What are the other ones? There's a million of them.
I think
all
it's
those
important that we're teaching kids how the world is now. We're telling them, like, this is what you have to be prepared for. You have to realize there's all this craziness now. There's things that weren't there. Like, look back 10 years ago and you remember growing up, right? It's very different from where you are now. So I think it's the changing world that education's slowly adapting for that. I don't know if I fully agree with it, because in any theory, people are picking and choosing. If I'm giving a teacher curriculum and saying, hey, someone decided this is what critical theory is, right? A teacher's still going to take that and only teach what they want to teach.
So when you were in high school, you didn't learn critical
Anything, no. No, I didn't. Did
Man,
you?
I did.
Interesting.
So this year I took a sociology class and I learned like hardcore critical race theory, all of them, feminist theory, all these different theories.
Oh yeah, I did some shit like that.
You learned, okay, so you probably learned feminist theory in like English class.
No, we did it in sociology.
Yeah, so sociology has been turned into, like, sociology in a broad sense is one of the most important things to learn about, I believe.
Yeah.
How people, it's really the study of how people interact in groups, right?
You have to know how to do it.
100%.
Yeah.
Sociology is so important, but it's been flipped into critical theory. So I learned a lot about it in school, and I already knew, because just from like, it's kind of like the new culture war thing is critical race theory and all these things. And I think both sides have it wrong. I think the left says it's important to teach, to learn about slavery and all these, we're just teaching real history. Well, of course we're learning real history. Yeah. And then the right says this is, it's racist, it's this and that, which is like, kind of. I don't like the idea of teaching someone, you or I, we're both white, saying you are an oppressor because of the skin color and not because of your skin color and not because of what you do in your life, and then having someone who might be a minority and saying you are being oppressed. I don't think that's good for either child.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, I don't think
because that's the problem. It's the child.
Exactly.
You're teaching a kid from a young age and saying, "Oh, hey,
you're a victim.
Here's your role. Here's your role." Just teach kids. Fuck. It's
saying you're a victim and you're gonna have to, like, you can't go anywhere in life because of your skin color and the way that the system is set up, which is totally not true. There might be barriers in individual people's lives because of certain aspects, which is horrible. I hope that that's all gone. But at the same time, saying to someone who might be a black kid and saying you're not going to be able to, you're a victim and you're not going to be able to succeed in life because of your skin color, because of the oppressive class, what is that kid going to go home? You think he's going to go home and want to do his homework and work hard and make something out of his life? Or is he going to want to sit back and say, like, woe was me, my life's terrible because of what I'm learning in school, this is true? It's a terrible ideology to have.
Yeah.
I just want everyone to be uplifted. I want everyone to be told that they can do it, which is true.
I think I 100% agree with you to an extent. I think, like, I agree that we can't be raising children to be victims. That's regardless of the color of your skin right now. I think a major problem is you're a victim, regardless of who you are. 100%. If any obstacle comes your way, don't worry, you're a victim.
It's not your fault,
right? And that's the thing. We gotta start teaching kids. It is your fault that you did this. Like, because raising victim is raising people that don't see their actions having consequences, right?
And what does that create? It creates a society that's not willing to work hard and not willing to. And that's my problem with the education system. Was like we need to get kids to wanna, like, I don't even know how to explain it. We need to change the mindset of kids into personal responsibility. This is my life. I'm gonna take control of my life. I'm gonna do what I want with my life.
Yeah.
It's not up to anyone else. I don't care if, like, I'm not gonna get a job in it or the way that the education system is set up, it's that we're programmed into being workers and not thinkers and not innovators and not people who are going to start business. We're not taught to be entrepreneurs. We're taught to be some guy who works at a desk from 9 to 5 and goes home and has an unhappy marriage.
You're taught to follow the system that they want in place, right?
100%. And that's my problem with government-run schools.
I mean, like, the problem with every side has the problem, right? And I think the problem that comes in with the privatized system without government regulation is exploitation. And the problem with exploitation is what we saw in 2008 was exploitation of the market, and that's why everything collapsed. But then getting back to personal responsibility, when 2008 happened, no one took responsibility. Everybody cashed out, and then
they got bailed out after.
Yeah, and then the taxpayer cleaned it up. That's
and that's where the Occupy Wall Street movement comes from.
Yeah, but I didn't do shit. They all marched down the street and smashed a couple windows before the police showed up and maced them.
This is all gonna come together
Full
here.
circle.
Full circle. So we talked about how the wars created the 2008 crisis. So the way I think is actually what happened was after 2008 Occupy movement, and it's all based on economics, right? It's all people saying we got screwed over by our government. They lied to us.
Yeah.
They screwed over the economy, and they bailed out these hedge funds and these
money.
big banks, and they left us to dry. So people were angry, and like real change, I think was on the rise. Like I really do believe that. And then right after that, there's a graph. I did a podcast in law class or politics class about this actually. There's a graph where you can see the word systemic racism being used in the media. I think it's by the New York Times or the Washington Post, one of those corporate media things. And it's like right around the Occupy movement, it's like flatlined and it just shoots up. So I'm under the impression that this critical theory, all that stuff it's corporate and it's government run, and it's like, call me a conspiracy theorist for saying this, but there's no way that when people were like, there's this meme that I always talk about, and it's like a banker sitting in the Occupy Wall Street movement, and he's like, his assistant comes in and they're like, oh, they're throwing bricks at your window, like what are you gonna do? And he's like, show them identity politics. So it takes these groups, you got the leftists, the libertarians, all these people that are so angry, and they're all coming together no matter their race, gender, whatever. They're all coming together to be angry at the system. And then
division, that's how
it's divide and conquer, right? Yeah. So that's how I believe we got to where we are now.
I think obviously there's a lot more in it, but
for sure, yeah.
I totally agree with what you're saying though. Like I'm really iffy because I feel like I'm not educated enough in the critical theory sphere, we'll say. Like I haven't listened to enough or read enough about it. So we'll have you back again and definitely talk more about it. But
it is something that I'm trying to educate myself more about. Like I think there's some good aspects.
Well, I think that's the thing though. Even if you don't agree with something, educate yourself. I don't like communism. I've read the Communist Manifesto twice because I'm like, I want to educate myself.
I do
and
that.
see.
Yeah, I'm trying to read it too. It's just like
it's fun. I like reading it out loud angrily, like I'm on a podium.
Well, that's the problem with Marx though. Is Marx thought that he didn't outline the transition period. It was from the proletariat revolution right into the utopia. Yeah. There was he never outlined what happened when Stalin takes over. Right? Yeah. He didn't talk about how he didn't talk about the gulags, or he didn't talk about what they did to Ukraine.
But that's the thing, like that's, I get annoyed when people say like those are two different ideologies, but they are. Like
they're not.
Well, at its core, what is communism? Workers seizing the means of production, right? And then, perfect utopia afterwards. Afterwards, when you get into Stalinism, what we'll call it Stalinism, Leninism, everybody wants to change it. It's still at its core, you have the idea that, hey, the government's giving everybody food, we're all making the same money, it's chill. But the problem that came in was we didn't have the resources to do that. Well, the USR didn't. And then you got to start throwing people into camps because you don't want anybody disagreeing with you, right?
Well, I heard a podcast say this the other day. The problem with communism is you have the garbage worker, the guy like who drives a garbage truck.
Yeah.
And then you have an artist.
Sure.
And if you pay them the same amount, no one's going to want to do the garbage and everyone's going to want to be the artist. So
what's incentivizing the individual?
The free market,
right?
Like maybe the artist in a capitalist society will know, maybe I'm not going to be able to eat tonight because I can't.
Yeah, I'm inspired to hustle, right?
But then the garbage worker, they might make $80,000 a year with benefits and be able to feed their family. So that's how like there's flaws to it. Like I wish everyone could be an artist, but there's no way to run society like that. Like the only way to do it is to be able to provide incentives.
Yeah.
And I don't think the right incentives are, if you don't do what we're told, we're going to take you to a camp and do it. Like it's like if only we. That's another thing I have about schools. If only we learned about Stalin as much as we learned about Hitler.
Yeah, he killed way more people. If you learned about Mao, he killed even more people.
Oh my God. I think Mao killed more people than
Stalin and Hitler together, probably. It's about 100 million, they think.
They think.
Because China doesn't release shit. They're covering up pyramids and making them look like mountains. That's a conspiracy. That's super weird.
What about North Korea?
But that's the problem. An authoritarian state doesn't release the numbers, right? Like
I was reading this thing about North Korea in the 90s, China and the Soviet Union was propping up North Korea because they were another communist regime. Yeah. And North Korea had no value because they don't have it's not like
they don't have anything.
They have no resources.
They used to outproduce the South, and then the South was like, "Hey, you guys don't have shit anymore." And then massive U.S. funding. But still,
yeah. So there's no resources. Like they have no way to there's no energy source, and there's no like good farming or agriculture. So like, what they would do is when the USSR was like booming, they would give them like the crappiest things. Like they'd make like socks.
Yeah.
North Korea would, and they'd give them in exchange for food and stuff. But when the USSR fell because Reagan bankrupted them essentially with the arms race, they fell, and North Korea had no influx, and it created a famine.
Yeah, millions of people.
Millions. Died. They had no clue. They have no clue.
Well, the problem is you're also putting people in camps, right?
And they're doing that still to this day. But there's stories from North Korea now because we have like defectors and some sort of like idea of what happened. And in the 90s in their famine, what they would do is, this is going to sound gruesome, but I think you could take it.
I think I can.
Parents would eat their own children because they knew that if they didn't,
they'd die.
They knew that if they didn't eat them, the parents would die, and then other people would eat their own children. Yeah. So they would rather eat their own children and it's unimaginable, but they would rather do that than have someone else do it once they died. And people to this day want that ideology. They did it.
They don't. Like
they do
want the utopia. When someone's a communist, if you're in any ism, we'll say, whatever, capitalism, communism, whatever, you're highlighting what you want, right? When I think capitalism, I'm like about to make that bank, right? I like capitalism better. I think it's a much better system, although there is exploitation, right? Yeah. But with the communist system, it's forced. You have to wipe out a group of people and reset the playing field. It's not, you can't just be like, okay, everyone, you're making this much now. Sorry, we're gonna still tax you. You'll get rations from the government.
And then, but the flaw is in communism. Who gets to decide? I thought the workers own the means of production.
It can't work.
It can't. Well, it's impossible.
That's not like the actual. I guess it's the predecessor to communism. It started after the French Revolution. It's called like syndicalism. Yeah. And it's basically.
Was that like that wasn't. What was the guy that killed everyone? Robespierre?
I don't remember who started it.
I could have it wrong. Anyways.
But the whole thing about it was it's doing the absolute most, we'll say, because everybody votes on everything. They create a union of all the workers, and then the workers vote on everything from in-country politics to war to everything. And that's the problem. You can't have a system like that. If everybody's voting, you get nowhere.
Yeah, right? Well, and that's the other problem. It's like, that's why I hate democracy. Like, I think democracy is evil.
Authoritarian state, where you at?
The problem is, in a democracy, you can, it's just like, whoever has the most votes wins, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what the issue is. If you have the most votes, you win.
Yeah.
So you can suppress my rights by buddying up with you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's when you make it's like when NDP and Liberals come together for votes to keep out conservative. Right?
Exactly.
I mean, I don't like the Conservative Party, but still, it's...
Well, they're nothing. They're nothing.
They're goofs. Like
they're
as much of a joke as the Québécois at this point.
Dude, I'm pro Québécois. Separatist movement, let's go.
Yeah, get rid of them. I'm French. My family's from Quebec, but like, get rid of them. You want to leave so bad? No more of our money. No more bailouts. No more federal help. We'll just fly over you.
So what happens when Alberta does the same thing?
Alberta's not doing shit. The problem was when the
You
oil
don't think-
boom happened, and Canada set up so that the federal government can send money to each province that needs it. But
Yeah.
then when we had the problem where we're like, hey, let's stop so much oil, and then everything in Alberta went to shit, the only reason they survived was through massive billions of dollars to keep the oil sands open from the federal government. Alberta wouldn't be alive without Ontario and Quebec. Like, everything funnels back through. And if they want to leave so bad, fuck it, I don't care.
You don't think oil is important to our economy?
I think it's super important, but I think the way we go about it is extremely flawed.
By taxing it like crazy? Man, like, this is so unsustainable.
Well, drilling's unsustainable. The ocean's on fire in the Gulf of Mexico right now. Like,
do you know who did that? The government.
Yeah? The deep state did that?
No, it was a government-run company that did that.
So we should privatize it.
I think if there was a market for it, we wouldn't have that stuff happening, because that wouldn't be a company if they weren't.
Well, do you remember the major spill in like the early 2000s in the Gulf of Mexico?
Yeah, the Gulf of Mexico, yeah.
That's still being cleaned up.
Yeah.
Like, no one talks about this shit.
No, I know. But, I mean, I think you got to take the good with the bad. Like, there's a correlation between life expectancy and fossil fuel gas. Like, what do you call that? Like,
petrol or
yeah,
battery operated vehicles.
Like any, like that type of, trying to articulate it here. That type of, like that, using those resources for energy,
yeah,
has made human life exponentially better.
It's
life expectancy
streamlined us, basically.
It makes so that you can, like, your child can be raised without being scared of, like, them not making it.
Oil has helped us immensely.
Yeah.
But eventually we're gonna have to say bye-bye.
And I'm okay with that.
Me too, but it's like you said, the good with the bad. My problem is that we have people saying, like, what's the point, right? The ocean's rising, who gives a shit? That's the point. Is, should we stop and just say fuck it? Yeah, I had a question here for you that was like, are you pro space movement? Like, should we get out into space and start exploring?
I mean,
or
why
should
not?
we? Right, that's what I'm saying.
Like, who cares?
Because there's a lot of people, the contingent that say, well, let's fix what's going on here first. It's
There's
like,
only one Elon Musk.
I mean,
So, like, while he's alive, we better do what we can do, because there's no one else coming.
well, there's probably other people that'll show up in the next couple of years. Not from
Dude, that guy
our
is insane.
generation, but, you know.
Guy, there's no one like him.
I mean, he's a little much. I have certain opinions about Elon Musk. I think he's annoying sometimes
Well, yeah.
when he tries to manipulate the market. Like, get out of here. But
Oh, with Bitcoin?
with everything, he's been manipulating
Do you know what-
stocks for years.
Do you know what annoys me about him? What he named his kid.
I don't like. He didn't give his kid a name. He's like, I really like this plane.
This one plane.
And my wife liked the name Ash, so we put the letter A in there, and then a bunch of numbers. What the fuck? That kid. Good thing that kid doesn't go to public school. Flamed into oblivion.
R2D2.
Literally is. It's a joke.
What else did you want to ask me?
Let's see. We talked about the pandemic, long-term side effects about the pandemic. I don't know if you have any hot takes on that.
I mean,
it's bad.
what happens if, like, the vaccines just, like, don't, like,
you'll see people can't take it. That's the problem. We can't stay inside forever.
Yeah.
I keep hearing step 3 is getting pushed back again, but
I think there needs to
we
just
can't
be a
do it
revolution.
long term.
If we're talking about insurrection, I think it's time.
Hey, sorry, Ford. People are already showing up at his house.
Good.
With that guy showed up with a hatchet or whatever.
Good.
Good? You don't like Ford?
No, I think he's an evil.
Yeah,
If you force someone to stay inside their own home, you're evil.
I mean, to an extent, it's the idea of extenuating circumstances.
Do I want him to?
right?
Do I want someone to go to his house with a hatchet
And murder him?
No,
Obviously not.
Obviously
right?
not. But at the same time, I think he needs to be accountable for this.
Yeah, well, he's not gonna be. At the end of
No.
the pandemic, he's gonna be like, I protected people.
Yeah.
No, you didn't.
No, you didn't. You ruined lives
Literally.
and caused people to kill themselves.
Yeah.
So you're like.
It became a major, like, hey, you can go off about it.
Do I think that he like meant well? Probably.
Obviously, at the start, you have to take into account that we didn't know,
Oh,
right? But now we
100%.
do, and
100%.
everybody's saying we might see another wave, but then it brings into question, then isn't this just the fucking flu? Like,
Hasn't it always been?
right? Ugh, fuck, get me going. Like, I don't know. I don't want to be the guy saying, like, I don't want to switch my opinion and be like, what the fuck, because I've known people that lost loved ones.
Oh,
from
it's
this.
horrible.
But, like,
It's horrible.
at the end of the day, if your loved one got the common cold, would the same thing not happen possibly?
Yeah.
That's what's fucked up to me, right? And how many misdiagnoses did we give to people that just had a cold or the flu?
Or like someone's got COVID and then they get in like a car accident and die or
Died
whatever,
from COVID.
and they died from COVID. Like I think that's real. Like I think
probably is. They
like,
lied about a lot of stuff. Well, that's the problem. Do
Think
you
about
tell
who-
the truth, or do you keep lying to keep people
well, if you want to
passive,
talk
right?
about stuff like governments have lied about a lot worse stuff than this.
In Alberta, they used to vaccinate special needs people so that they would sterilize them. Like, it's just how it's been. Like, no wonder people have distrust in the government when the government's been fucking us over.
The U.S.
so
government literally lied. How many wars have they lied them into?
Well, they weren't. But World War One, justifiable kind of.
World War One was stupid. It should never
Yeah.
happen. World War II, they definitely lied them in. They knew Pearl Harbor was coming.
Yeah, but after World War II, that's when you see America take. We're an international country now. It's
the
not.
UN, right?
They used to stay inside, but post World War
That's the way
II,
it
they're
should
like,
be.
we're the peacekeepers of the world. But we're not. We're just making billions of dollars.
We're just
selling
trying to be an
arms,
empire. Yeah.
right?
They lied them into Vietnam. Vietnam was a lie.
Do you
Gulf
think
Tonkin.
the world would be better if we had an empire, just one nation?
No.
Humanity, the human race.
No.
Really? Interesting.
Who would make the decisions?
Right? See, I think about that a lot.
I would. Okay. If there was a government, then no. But if
if we had
think about
like a
it.
council or something.
Think about it. Why do we need that though? Think about it. If we just had no borders, private property, everyone obeyed private property. Everyone would be able to arm themselves and defend themselves however they want. If they could hire private security, there was no government, no police, and you just traded with each other and let the market just roll.
I don't know. I don't know how I feel. It scares me because it's different, right? It's the unknown of what
you
could
got to
happen.
compare it. Like you probably are thinking right now. This is one point that I wanted to bring up that like I like that a lot of libertarians make is people you probably think like right now, like when I first started explaining like what I believe to you, you're like, this guy's an extremist, like this guy's crazy.
No, I talk to psychos all the time.
Okay,
Don't,
cool.
Don't stress.
But if I talk to a normal person who like probably wasn't like that educated, they'd be like, this guy's an extremist. He's a radical. But it's like, who's the real extremist? Me, someone who believes in personal rights, or the center of the people? Think about our government, and we can talk about the U.S. government because it's even worse. Our government. What has our government done? Spent us into trillions of dollars of debt. Sent indigenous children to residential schools committed genocide on the whole population of people.
And now we don't want to acknowledge it and keep saying, hey, Catholic Church, why don't you say sorry?
Yeah. No, that's government that should be saying sorry. And
maybe give reserves fresh water. I don't know.
Or just let them be.
Right.
Stop. Get rid of the Indian Act. Like, just allow them to live how they want to live.
Yeah.
Allow everyone to live how they want to live. what else have we done? There was another thing that I was gonna say. Oh yeah, locked people in houses for almost 2 years.
Yeah.
Like, so who's the real extremist, me or those people? I would like to think it's not me.
Hey, the crazy people never think they're crazy, right?
I know.
I don't think you're crazy though.
Yeah.
I agree with what you're saying. I understand it.
So, what are your thoughts on the whole Canada Day thing? Did you see all that, like the cancel Canada Day thing? What do you think?
My thoughts are, if you were one of those people that went to rallies waving Canadian flags, yelling Canada Day, you're a piece of shit. Don't be a dickhead. But at the same time, no one's celebrating Canada. No one has been celebrating Canada for years. The whole thing of Canada Day is, I want an excuse to get shit-faced with my friends and shoot fireworks while wearing red. We've never been like, yay, go government. It's never been that.
But
it's just, it's supposed to be.
Honestly, though, like, I don't think it should be go government. I think it should be the Canadian people. Like, tell me, I don't know if you're into sports or whatever, but like, I'm a big sports guy, big hockey guy.
Sure.
So when Canada wins a gold medal, and I see like the effort and like the dedication,
that is the idea,
and like I see those like hockey players like singing the national anthem as they win the gold medal. It's like I have a pride in that because like I believe like that's like dedication and hard work. Like I believe those are Canadian values, but at the same time, I hate my government. I think my government's evil. So I love my country because I love the people and I love what it stands for. But I hate what the government's made our country into.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Like I love the, like, if you think of like what is like someone who's Canadian thought to be kind, all
maple syrup, mooses that talk, mounties, all the classics, right?
But like characteristics though,
usually
like
the
polite
Canadian characteristic is
hardworking,
right?
And like I think those are great things.
Yeah.
But I think it's just been ruined by our government. So like if you want to say we shouldn't celebrate Canada Day because of our government, I agree we shouldn't celebrate our government because it's evil and I hate it. And if, like I said when we started, if I could push a button to end the government, I would do it right now. But if you're in the camp that says I want to celebrate my country for its values and how it should be, then I kind of agree with that too. But if you're in the middle and you say I want to celebrate my government for all the great things it's done, it's like, no, you're a piece of shit. I hate you.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So
I think you wrapped that up pretty well.
Yeah.
At that point in general, I was like, you know what, I could go after that. I'm not.
But there's stuff so much more nuanced than people make it out to be, I think.
Because it's hard to be nuanced when you're uneducated, and that's even harder when we have such a large uneducated population, right? Like, it's almost impossible to be nuanced, especially when everybody's forcing the viewpoint on you, right? It's when I go home, anybody goes home, you talk to your parent, and they'll say something, right? When I remember going to school, and all the kids that had some knowledge of politics are talking out of their ass because they don't look into it, right?
Yeah.
It's, I heard someone say, and now I'm educated. And that was my problem with the whole Canada Day thing. All these people preaching protest and all that stuff. You're not educated after reading one infographic. Sorry. How about you actually look into it, know what you're talking about, and then support the cause?
Yeah.
Don't blindly just start being like, yeah, we gotta do this, gotta do that.
What do you think's gonna happen? Like
nothing ever happens. Something massive needs to happen for something to happen.
Think about the amount of residential schools that there were, and the amount
it's like almost 200.
It's insane.
And we found almost over 2,000 bodies now.
And how many schools have we looked at?
It's like 10.
10?
Yeah.
Like think about large scale. Think about where this is going.
Right.
Like me and you know because we know what happened and we understand.
Yeah.
But like for the regular person, like our parents were alive when this was happening.
It stopped in the mid-90s.
Yeah. And I literally asked my mom the other day, I'm like, did you know when you were growing up that this was happening? She's like, no. Like
no one, because it didn't get talked about. Especially when you fly to reserves that are in the middle of nowhere, abduct a child, and then fly them across the country and say, okay, sorry, you can't wear what's from your culture, you can't speak your language, can't practice your religion, and now we're gonna force all these things onto you,
and more
right?
Abuse and all these terrible
sexual
things.
abuse, physical abuse, like everything. It was just not a good time, and I don't know why we haven't acknowledged it.
But that's what I'm saying. It's like, where do we go? Like, what's gonna happen when this just blows up? Like, it's gonna blow up eventually. Like, what happens if they find just something? Like, I don't know. I just feel like it's gonna get worse and it's gonna get ugly, and I just don't know what's gonna happen.
See, I thought that was what's gonna happen, but as this has progressed, as I stopped seeing headlines about the number of bodies found, I feel like it's slowly being pushed out of the media limelight, we'll say.
That's a bad thing.
It's a terrible thing. It's, hey, we're not acknowledging the fact this is happening. We're finding hundreds of bodies of children. No one's over the age of 18 that they're finding. Like, these are kids. Like, I think it's the school in Brantford or whatever. They said, like, the apple orchard in the back, apparently they planted a tree every time a kid went missing. So they think kids are under the trees. Like, it's... I don't know what's going to happen. I want something to happen. Like, it was like when the protest happened in the States. I wanted something to happen, but I feel like nothing happened.
Did there.
Yeah, but I think small regulations change, but
nothing really.
It's nothing major.
Like, think about like the, like the Breonna Taylor thing.
Yes.
There was an act passed about no-knock warrants because of that case. I believe
a no-knock warrant shouldn't be a thing in my opinion.
This
I don't think
one of my favorite podcasters, when they always talk about no-knock warrants, okay. And he was a Soviet defector, like his parents, when he was 2 years old, like got out of there, risked their lives, and he said even Stalin would knock. That's how, like, think about that.
Well, they'd knock and then kick the door and scream KGB.
But they would knock and you would know that they were there.
Yeah.
In a Western democracy, in this day and age,
how are you kicking a door in?
It's like people don't even think of it though. It's like, this is evil.
Well, it's because people, for years, we've propped up the police as these are the heroes. Whatever police do.
Same with the military.
Yeah, and I don't think you should get special treatment because you put on a uniform one day. You didn't do fuck all yet. Right? I like firefighters better than I like cops. They're not gunning down people.
Man, like every cop I've met in my life is a great person. Same with like teachers. Like I say, I hate the education system. Yeah. Every teacher that I've had, amazing.
Jeez, I'm having coffee with a teacher next week. We love it.
Awesome. You know what I mean? Like, these people are not bad people. It's just, I just don't like
the system they're forced in, right?
And it's like, what are they going to do? They're given a curriculum to teach.
Well, you hate government, right? But like, you don't hate the individuals in government. I hate.
No, I do.
I mean, like,
politicians
on the large scale. Like, someone working in an
hate.
office, right? Below a politician, you're a secretary, something like that.
Yeah, like it's someone who actually has power to do something to someone else. I hate them.
I agree with that. But most of those people that do have power to do something are behind the lights, right? It's the shadow government.
Yeah.
Deep state.
Speaking of deep state, you think they killed JFK?
I think Lee Harvey Oswald killed JFK.
He's a bad shot, bro.
He's not. He's decent enough. Everything is skewed. I listened to like a 6-hour podcast about him. He's actually an idiot. He left a U.S.
JFK?
No, Lee Harvey Oswald. He was a Marine, left, defected to the Soviet Union.
Yeah,
and he's like, here's all this information. And they're like, yeah, we already have that. Like, we have spy planes, man. You were like a low-ranking Marine. You know nothing. But, yeah, come on and stay. And then he defected from the Soviet Union.
Did he go back?
Yeah. Because he was like, damn, this isn't a good time.
Man, poor guy.
What a clown. We'll never know, though, because he was killed. That's the whole thing. Like,
yeah, who do you think killed him?
We know who killed him, but he walked up in a parking garage and...
You think the CIA was about to kill him?
I don't like believing in it. I don't want to believe the CIA is out here doing all this shady shit.
But...
I know they are.
They are.
And it spooks me. Because they're the real boogeyman of the world.
Well, think about JFK. What did he want to do? Pull out of Vietnam.
Yeah. You're fucking with money. As soon as you mess with people's money.
He wanted to end the Federal Reserve.
Yes.
Do you know who else wanted to do that? Lincoln. Do you know when Lincoln got a bullet in his head too? What was the other thing he wanted to do? Something with Cuba. Shit was going down with Cuba.
Oh, he just wanted to like stop trying to kill Fidel Castro, and
yeah,
the CIA was like, no, we've done it like 400 times.
Do you know what
now.
Operation Northwoods is?
No, I've heard that.
So the Joint Chiefs of Staff came to JFK when he was president and said, we have this huge plan to have our own planes or missiles or whatever.
Like, they were going to shoot down over...
No, they were going to go after like American civilians.
Yeah, to blame it on Cuba.
And they were going to blame it on Cuba so that they could have...
it almost happened.
They could go to... Like,
yeah,
it without JFK saying no.
Yeah, it would have happened. Like
He's interesting to me.
Like, he's obviously like a wild guy, womanizer, or whatever.
Oh yeah,
but he is a very interesting person. The Kennedys in general.
He's kind of like Trump. He was
a destabilizer, we'll say, right?
He was like one of the only presidents that like actually was the president. Like he actually ran the show.
Yeah.
Trump kind of, but like JFK ran the show. But he also had like hired like several people on taxpayer dollars just like go around the White House picking up women's clothes because there's just every night there's just like...
Because he was just living his best life.
Who's president?
Living his best life, right? I mean, this is a really good conversation, but I've recorded another podcast today and I don't want my phone to run out of space.
Yeah.
So, any hot takes, anything to leave the people with?
Man, just like...
Insurrection.
Oh, no. You're probably gonna like go through this and you're like, I can't post that. I can't post that.
I'll post it all unedited.
It's just like before people, whoever listens, like before you actually like call me crazy, just like read into it. Ask me, text me, and
go
be
down
like,
the rabbit hole.
Go down the rabbit hole.
I used to get nightmares reading about conspiracies. That's why I smoke weed, because I won't have dreams and then I can't have nightmares. Win-win.
True.
Good times.
But at the same time, it's like, why doesn't everyone just love everyone? Like, stop dividing. I don't care what politics you are, what race you are, what gender, or whatever. Just, everyone's human. Just like, why can't we all just come together?
There's only one race, and it's the human race.
I think we end it there.
Beauty.